metrics. All right. So although I've talked about it at I've talked about it quite a lot in terms of how you judge, etc. I'm going to tell you about the major three metrics based on which you will be judged, so as to give you a very nuanced sort of an understanding of what you need to do in your speeches. The second thing I'm going to be covering is how to make the best use of the 15 minutes of prep time that you get with your teammate before going into the debate. And the third thing that we're going to be doing is practice on a motion which I already have with me. I'm going to show you arguments on that motion after you have thought about it yourself, after I've given you the time to think about it yourself. So we're going to have a collective sort of a thoroughgoing discussion on how to deal with motions. Mock debates that do not mean that like a couple of you will be delivering speeches and the rest of them will be listening, because I don't think that helps as much as the collective preps help. All right. So allow me to share my screen now. I'll just share the deck with you. Also, please don't reiterate your questions in the DMs, in my DMs about the recordings. Like I said, we're going to be sorting that today post this session. We'll give you all the links all over again, which you can refer to have a proper understanding of all that's been done so far. With that, sharing my screen. Okay, so I formally welcome you all to day 3 of training for Oxford Qualifiers, scheduled to happen on 20th January from 3:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. General guidelines I've already made clear. I'm not going to reiterate them. I'm just going to share the PDF in which they are. Remember, equity does not deal with contesting the verdict of the judges. The judge, whatever the judges say is the verdict, is the final verdict. You cannot come questioning the verdict, because these are all qualified judges that we're going to be putting in your rooms as chairs. Besides that, please be mindful of being very subtle, calm, composed, understanding of your environment and the people in it. Debating can be a very heated exercise. We don't want it to be that. So if you maintain your calm and equilibrium, it's also it goes a long way to be merited within the speaker scores that you get. I'll tell you how. But in day 3 of training, like I said, we're covering these 3 things. Let's start with criteria for adjudicators first. All right. So like when I go into a debate and when I deliver a speech, how am I judged? And as in terms of my speech, because see, sure, this is a team activity. This means that if you're going to do well, you're going to have to do well as a team. You cannot individually shine. I mean, this is to say that if you, even if you're individually an exceptionally good speaker, if your team keeps losing, let's say loses all 3 rounds, then you're not going to make it to the out rounds, which means that you're supposed to ensure at all times that it's a team effort and that the team is doing well throughout, which means there has to be proper coordination between you and your teammate. You should be in on the case that you're going to run. You should have like shared understanding of what the arguments are, and you are supposed to be like collaborative in this exercise. But secondly, about individual speeches, why do they matter, ma'am, if this is a team effort? Because obviously your speeches are going to determine what the team effort is like. Is it good, bad, optimal, suboptimal, right? This means that for you need to ensure your speeches are good, and you need to help your teammate deliver a good speech. You can behind the scenes WhatsApp your teammates as allowed, like please say this in your reply speech, so on and so forth. That communication line is open even when the debate is on. You just can't communicate with your teammate on the main Zoom chat, because that's obviously distracting for the speakers who are delivering their speeches. All right. Now, how are you judged on the basis of your speech in this particular format, and what are the metrics that judges look at? They look at matter, manner, and method, matter being the most important. Now, see, matter is when what is basically the content of your speech. What are you saying, and does it make sense? So for example, somebody's argument is really good, I mean, so 2 teams might be running the same argument, but one team runs this argument in a more impactful manner, right, as opposed to the other team which just mentions the argument but does not analyze it. So this is what matter means. Matter means how many inputs are you able to bring in, how are you branching out your arguments, what kind of impacts do your arguments have, what kind of analysis is, the analysis good enough, or is it just like passable with like just one line of analysis to the argument, right? So how detailed is it, how many examples does it have, Obviously, this has nothing to do with statistics and research, because research, like I said, is prohibited. But it has everything to do with your logic and reasoning and how you use it in real time, right? So, in terms of how you rebut, the quality of your rebuttal, the efficacy of your rebuttal, all of that will be a part of matter. But then the idea of manner, which is the second metric. So matter has weightage. Let's say, see, I'll tell you how marking is done for BP format because it's slightly different. So just hear me out on the metric, then I'll tell you how the scoring is done. Manner is obviously you have to be on camera. That's one aspect of manner. Even if you choose to not, I mean, see, it's about being on camera, but what manner also encompasses is your conduct in the room. So are you being too meanly aggressive to the other person? It's one thing to be a very like enthusiastic sort of a speaker, and a completely different thing to be demeaning your teammate, right? You never attack the person, you always attack the argument. This is important. This means that even if you think your opposition is making no sense at all, you do not have the right or the prerogative to say that this person is bad or they don't know what they're saying or I don't know where my opponent has come from. We tend to get very mean when we are in a competitive setting. You need to definitely eschew that kind of a possibility if you want to get marked well on manner. Because manner is all about ethics, manner is all about maintaining the decorum of the room, manner is all about winning, but not at the cost of somebody else's uh, sense of safety in the tournament. All right. Besides that, method. Now, about so method is one of the most important. Like everything is important at the end of the day, obviously, but method is very closely related to matter. This means that sometimes you might have very good matter, but if you do not have the right method, then even you might get down mark not only on method but also on uh, method. So basically, method is when is basically the structure, right? So if matter is what you're saying, method is how you're saying. So if you're making notes, matter is what am I saying? Method is how, like how are you saying it? I might have brilliant arguments, but then I might give you these arguments in a bundle, in like a very confounding sort of a bundle, wherein I don't segregate these arguments. I don't tell you why this argument matters. I don't give you any sort of like a differentiation of why this argument matters less or more, and I keep jumping from one argument to the other argument. So that sort of a thing is not something that's appreciated, because you can give like 10 arguments in a speech. Some people try to cram in a lot of arguments because they think, hey, the number of arguments is determines if I'm going to win or lose. That's a misnomer. That's not how it's done. Basically, even if you run one argument, you're supposed to do justice to it. You're supposed to ensure that what you're saying in that one argument makes perfect sense, and that argument is well analyzed, and you have examples to back that argument, and you're telling me what the impact of that argument is. Like if something should happen, why should it happen? According to you, on your side, what are the good, or what is the good side of it? What's the underbelly of it? Those kinds of things. So even if you're running one argument and that argument alone is a very good argument, you might just win. This means the number of arguments has nothing to do with the quality of the argument. That's why quality is always like a more important sort of like a metric as opposed to quantity. All right. This is the criteria for adjudication. Quickly, are there any questions? I'll stop sharing for a minute. Take questions only for like a minute because we have a lot to cover today. Give me 1 second. Don't worry about the mock session. So the process is in my hands. I'll be telling you what we're going to be doing in the next 15-20 minutes. And you don't have to worry about the flow of the session. Are rebuttals said in the 5-minute speech itself, or is it a response to a POI? Yes. Rebuttals are said, everything is done in your speech because you literally have no other time to speak other than your speech. So rebuttals, uh, remarks on the other sides, weighing, comparisons, clarifications, everything has to come in your speech. That's like, that should be a no-brainer by now. Because whatever you want to do, you're supposed to do it through your speech. And you're only given one speech per speaker in this format. So it's pretty tight that way. What do you mean by natural flow for rebuttal? I never said natural flow for rebuttal. But if you're saying how are rebuttals supposed to be done, rebuttals are supposed to be done in the same speech. You can either first rebut and then extend your arguments, or you can extend your arguments first and then rebut. So usually the DPM will rebut, right? No, see, if there has been a speaker who's gone before you, then this means you need to rebut. Because always the speaker who goes before you is a speaker who tries to bring you down or tries to bring your side down. If I'm DPM, LO before me tried doing that. If I'm member of government, maybe my DLO tried doing that. All right. So if somebody has spoken before you, this means you need to rebut. It's not just the deputy prime minister's responsibility. It is literally every speaker's responsibility before whom another speaker has gone and attacked the case. All right. Is the DLO speech focused on rebutting DPM's points, or are they expected to come up with new, better arguments? See, like I said yesterday, the deputy speakers are supposed to do two things. Remember them as two R's: rebuilding and rebutting. Rebutting is I will rebut what my other side is saying. I will try to destroy their case, not the person. I'm telling you, attack the argument. I will try to attack their argument. I will try to bring it down. I will try to prove that their side does not have enough merit. The second thing I'm doing then is rebuilding. Rebuilding is I will build my case all over again. I will give it better analysis than my first speaker because whatever my first speaker said has already been taken down by my opposition. So rebuilding is required when somebody demolishes your existing structure. Your existing structure is your first speaker's speech. It will be demolished by the other side if that's good, if they are good enough. And then you are going to have to rebuild it. You're going to have to say, no, this matters. So think of it like as like a building, which is like when it's under attack, it's all like in a bad state of affairs, and you're supposed to reorganize it. That's what deputy does. If you lose confidence in between the speech, can you pause? Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, see, you're not downmarked on manner if you pause, if you fumble, if you're grammatically incorrect. This is not public speaking. So don't be fearful of grammatical inaccuracies or like stopping in between, fumbling. It's perfectly all right. Those are lapses which we cannot, I mean, which we are not punitive towards. So that's all right. If closing arguments have whips, aren't they put a greater? No, I told you about greater advantage. I'm not going to repeat myself. Nobody is at a greater advantage. And this format works like this. So we're going to have to make a peace with it anyway, right? If you cross your time limit, it's okay for you to cross it by 20 seconds. If you do it for more than that, the judge will probably stop you. Also, the most important thing is that whatever you say after 5 minutes and 20 seconds is not written down by the judges, which means they will not be evaluating you on the basis of what you say after the designated mark. All right. So even if you're allowed to speak after 5 minutes and 20 seconds, it's futile. Nobody's going to listen to that. In a third part manner, is there a particular format for the speech? No, there is no particular format. Like I said, the first speaker is supposed to do set up an argumentation. The second speaker is supposed to rebuild and rebut. You can do it in whichever way. There is no set format to this. All right. So don't worry about that. Okay, I think so much for right now. Ruhina, why do you have your hand raised? Everybody's asking their question in the chat. I think you could do that as well. Um, don't ask me about recordings, guys, right now, please. It's a request. I told you I'm going to be sharing everything today itself all over again. So as to, I mean, so that you can access it, all right, all in one place. Okay. Uh, two more questions. How can we rebut our opponents if we only get one speech in the whole debate? See, you ask questions. That's what points of information are for. You won't be able to rebut everything in your speech, obviously. In which case, you are given the facility of asking questions, but the speaker might or might not accept these questions. So there are other ways of engagement, but then it depends. All right. So the two ways of engagement are through your speech and through the questions you can ask and the questions you can be asked. All right. Ma'am, if we can't use the internet, then how will we join Zoom? You can use the internet for the thing that you should be using internet for. You can't use it for research. Can you rebut in protected time? Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, you can do whatever you want to in your protected time. It's just that the other side can't ask you a question in the protected time. So what you want to do in your speech is completely your thing. I mean, it's just that somebody else will not get to interrupt you in the protected time. Otherwise, don't make protected time like a big thing. You can do everything that you can do otherwise in your speech in the protected time as well, all right? So that's that. Give me 1 second, all right? Okay. Guys, okay, these are repeat questions. Please watch day one recording, all right? I'm not going to respond to these, otherwise we won't be able to practice. So please be all ears when I'm responding to other people's questions. There's a lot of repeat questions today. If you can quote something your opponent said and they deny, no, no, no. You don't have to see you can't communicate with the judge at all. You can't directly one-on-one connect communicate with the judge. That kind of a personal space does not exist for you. This means that you will not confirm anything with the judge. Please don't get all startled when you think the judge is not like understanding or listening, because judge is listening to every argument that's being made in the round. You don't have to be like extra concerned about it, because that apprehension is unfounded. It's not going to be that the judge is not listening, and because the judge is listening at all times, you don't have to like communicate with the judge per se. All right, so please don't try doing that either. It's going to create unnecessary problems for you. Okay, let's now move on. I'll share my screen over again. So yes, criteria done and dusted. How to think about arguments in 15 minutes. I think this is what you guys were looking forward to the most since yesterday. So let's just hope that this helps. I'll give you all 2 minutes to go through this while I'm also explaining it on the side. First of all, you have to be sure to divide your time into parts. Obviously, when I'm working on a time constraint, see, BP debating is not about who can think more, because everybody can think of a lot of things on a topic if they're given a lot of time. BP debating is about who is able to think smartly within a set time frame. You are supposed to prove that I am a nimble, I am uh, a prompt thinker. I'm a thinker who can organize their thoughts in 15 minutes. That's where the merit of the debater lies in this format. So 15 minutes of prep time will not be sufficient if you're all over the place. The first thing you need to do is look with your teammate. You need to decide beforehand that look, in every motion we're going to take the first 2 minutes perhaps to think to ourselves, okay? Because if you get the topic and immediately you start discussing it with each other, I don't think it's going to yield a lot of good results, because you can't immediately talk about something the moment you encounter it. So take first 2 minutes to do independent thinking. All right, after those first 2 minutes have lapsed, don't just keep doing independent thinking, because having good arguments is one thing, and being able to communicate those arguments with your partner is also equally important, another thing, right? This means that once those 2 minutes have elapsed, you'll be left with 13 minutes. After that, decide what are your arguments, what are your teammates' arguments, are there any common arguments that you have been able to find? If there are common arguments, put them in one place. Think about how you're going to analyze it. Think about how the first speaker should say them. Think about the setup that these arguments need. Okay. So the next thing you do is you start talking with the first speaker in your team about how they can do their speech, about how analysis can happen. In the case prep time, you are concerned about the first speech, not the second speech. Okay. This means that everything that gets discussed in the first everything that gets discussed in the prep time is actually supposed to be encompassed in the first speaker speech itself, like prime minister or LO or member of government or member of opposition. This is true because the second speaker will be thinking on the spot. The second speaker will be listening to the other side and then rebutting them. The second speaker will be listening to the other side's attack on their case and then rebuilding it, right? So the second speaker cannot have a pre-prepared speech as such. What you can do is you can, in the case prep time, ensure that you have a very good first speech. It is both of the speaker's responsibility to ensure that the first speaker delivers a good first speech, because the first speech is the basis upon which the second speaker will expound. Also, because this is teamwork, if one speech does not do well, even if you as a second speaker do extremely well, it's not going to be of use. So the prep time is supposed to be used to first 2 minutes to think to yourself, the next 4 or 5 minutes to talk to the first speaker. What do you think? What are the arguments? So think about the argument that you thought about as a team, and what are the commonalities, what are the arguments that you are running differently. Like there can be contradictions as well, so solve those contradictions. Why did we come up with these like contradictory thoughts? Which one should we keep? Those kinds of discussions should happen within the next 5 minutes. So this will be your 7 minutes elapsed, right? And the rest of the 8 minutes that you have, you should work towards analysis. What are the impacts of these arguments? What will our opposition say to these arguments? How can we mitigate that attack, those kinds of things. So in the last 8 minutes, you're supposed to just think about the first speech, what it should sound like, and what are the things it should have, and analysis. I mean, I've probably repeated this word for the 100th time, but it's required. Analysis is very important. For me to say something is one thing. For me to be able to explain why I'm saying it, where it comes from, how it works is yet another. Do you get it? So that's that. I'm sharing my screen, right? You all can see, right? Can one of you confirm?
Yeah, Nitiksha, your
Okay,
screen is visible.
fair enough. So now look at this. Make sure the speaker going first has all the matter. Please don't do gatekeeping. A lot of people think that, hey, okay, I'm the second speaker. Let me keep this material to myself. Let my first speaker not have it. Not a smart move, all right? Even from an individualistic sort of a viewpoint, not a smart move. Because if your first speaker does not do well enough, there's no chance that your speech will be able to uh, make your team win. It's good to have a stellar first speech in your team, regardless of who does it. So don't please look towards individual merit. Please look at it as a collaborative effort where you help your first speaker in the prep time, and your first speaker will help you after their speech is over through WhatsApp in the middle of the rounds. All right, it's a collaborative effort. Each speech is a collaborative effort. It's not an independent effort. Okay. Now, a fair question here is, ma'am, in 15 minutes, how can one think about ideas when we don't even have access to the internet? Well, think about first, my first tip is that you should think about the stakeholders in the debate, because when you think about more stakeholders, you're able to come up with more arguments. Stakeholders are people who are impacted in the debate. For example, if we have a motion, this house supports the making sports compulsory in all schools. Now, who are the stakeholders in this debate? Can somebody answer, please? Like in the chat, who do you think will be the stakeholders in this debate? Don't give me the same stakeholders. Students, already, a lot of people have already said. So, what else? Coaches, all right. Teachers, all right. Students, teachers, okay. Who else? Think more. So this is what I mean, right? Obvious stakeholders that will come to everybody's mind would be students and schools. That's why most of the arguments will be made on students and schools. How can you make your argument new if you're closing or something? By thinking about stakeholders that not everybody will think about. For example, I think Akanksha, Vivan have attempted this. Pulak as well. Is it, I mean, I hope it's Pulak. The parents. Parents are like a new group of stakeholders that took you some time in coming to. So admin is might not be a stakeholder, like a very relevant stakeholder, because admin has very little role to play in students' life. So the primary stakeholder will be student, because you are making education sports compulsory for students. This means it's going to impact students the most. And the secondary stakeholders can be many. So if you think you're running out of arguments, try to think about new stakeholders that gives you new linkages in the debate, which you can pursue and make arguments out of. The second thing is, if you can't come up with an argument, you feel like you've reached a dead end. You can think about political, social, economic, technological, and environmental implications of a motion when it is applicable. What does this mean? Let's say the motion is about like the parent-child relationship. Obviously, it's not directly related to politics, right? Parent-child familial relationships are not related to politics. It's macro and micro life, right? So, but there's still some possibility of relating it to politics. For example, between parent and child, politics might be involved because educational institutes are also politically governed. So, like, think about the broader ideas, all right? So, parent child relationship might be affected by the political setup, because think about a country where politically women are not allowed to drive a car, or like where women are kept in conservative systems, and politics doesn't allow them to like be more liberal. That will also create problems in the parent child relationship. Let's say a girl and her mother, because her mother would tell her not to go out or something, and the girl will be all like riled up about it. And this is because of the political structure of that society. So think about the major, bigger structures and how you can make arguments on them. What is the social aspect of the mother child relationship? Probably social is obviously like How am I with my mother? How do my friends see my parents? How do children in this in status quo, in the context and in the times that we live in, how do they approach their parents? What is the generational gap like, etc.? All of those are social concerns. You can think about economic concerns. For example, if my motion is again on parent-child relationship, then how is economy related to parent-child? Maybe sometimes the child wants a lot of things from you as a parent, because you this is a relationship of dependence, right? I expect you to fulfill my wishes because you're my parent, you're older, I'm your responsibility till I turn 18. In which case I expect you to I mean, when it's Christmas, I expect like Santa to get me fancy gifts. But what about a family that is not social like that, which isn't financially very robust? Then children might feel a certain resentment towards their parents, although wrongly so, for not being able to buy them enough stuff, and because their peers have those things and they don't. So a sense of deprivation, a sense of resentment in the parent-child relationship, those kinds of things can happen, and that's the economic strain on the motion. And what is how can technology be related? Obviously, the uh, advent of technology has made people's lives more private. Children don't feel like interacting with parents so much. There's little outdoor activities, there's little scope for interaction. Everybody is consumed by their devices, so on and so forth. And what can be an environmental implication? Now, you might think environment is unrelated, and it is. In a parent child motion, environment is unrelated, in which case we can just let it go, right? This does not mean that you're supposed to run political, environmental, economic, technological, and so forth, like cultural arguments in almost every motion. It just means that you can tap into these possible avenues if you are running out of arguments, to see if there is a possible argument in any of these avenues. Sometimes they will exist, sometimes they will not. So it's not like a mandatory thing, it's a suggestion. The last thing is, think about various situations in a motion and levels of approach. This is okay. The example will help you. Read the example with me in the last line in the slide. For example, a debate on success could be about individual or collective success. All right. What does this mean? So, debate on success, as in, if you have a motion, this house regrets the idea. This house regrets the narrative that one must be successful in life or something, right? Although this is not going to be a motion. I mean, I'm just giving you a very basic sort of an example. If you regret the idea of success in life, then what do we mean by success in this debate? Do we mean individual success, as in a child studying well, eventually getting a good job, eventually running a business, and thereby having a very happy life and moving abroad or whatever they want to do? Or do we mean organizational success, such as a company like Google or an Indian company or a startup doing well? Do we mean political success, as in the government's doing well? What do we mean, right? So sometimes, when if you think your opening has already run an argument about individual success, you can say our opening only talked about individual success. We are going to now talk about organizational success, collective success. All right. Likewise, if it wasn't about success, if it was, let's say, again about mothers. If the motion is on mothers, maybe your opening will talk about mothers as people who always want the well-being of the child. Well, that's only one part of the story. So you can say, okay, we are now going to talk about the worst case scenario where mothers aren't always the best actors. Okay, so try to make your case work on extremes in different situations. A situation, if somebody has already discussed a situation where the mother is the best actor in the world for the child, I might as well consider a situation where the mother is not the best actor for the child, and that the mother is also exhausted. She comes back home from work. The child is like more of a liability, etc. What does the motion look like in those situations? So these are my tips on how you can make the best use of your 15 minutes. Before we start practicing for the next half an hour, are there any questions? Also, we'll keep it quick, right? Otherwise, we won't have enough time for the practice, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it. Please ask your questions only when you haven't understood something, otherwise, we'll end up wasting our time. Can I delay a POI after my? No, you can't delay POIs. You have to answer, just like take one in the unprotected time. Also, if I'm asked to POI, will the time I take? Yes, your time will. Shivansh, you're not watching the videos. Day one video, in fact, you haven't watched, because this I already clarified that POIs are not going to be. I mean, your response will be a part of your speech, which means that the time will be considered from the speech. Will you share the marking scheme? Yes, will we get a minute in between the speeches? Not a minute, 20, 30 seconds, 30 seconds at best to gather your thoughts. Also, marking scheme, see, You're not given marks out of 30 or 40 in this format. It happens from 67 to 83. 67 is like the lowest you can get, and 83 is the highest you can get. And average is 75. Do you understand? So every judge starts with 75. If you have a better than average, like above average speech, you will be given 76, 77, 78, 79, 80 is really good. Or if you have a below average speech, it will be below 75, 74, 73, 72, 71 is just like really, really bad. It's nobody, I mean, I hope nobody gets that much. Can we use a POI as a fact or a rebut against the opponent team in a speech? Yes. These are not random numbers. That is an international format, so you can't question the format. I'm sorry. Will we get the recording of previous sessions? Yeah, sure. Are there you're asking? I mean, I've told you guys, please don't ask about the recording. We're going to share. You will be informed of your scores, speaker scores, but after the tournament. The It's done through the software, you'll know in due time. Are we marked as a team or each speaker by themselves? As a team and as a at first you're marked as a speaker, then the cumulative score is used to decide if you're going to go forward or not in the debate tournament. If we were to talk about national focus, would we have to talk about England since it is the BBC? No, no, no. You don't have to stick to a particular country. Why England? British parliamentary doesn't mean that this is happening. All the debates are happening in England or something. It's just called that by some because of some reasons. BP format does not mean that we are only going to discuss in the context of England or like English society. You can talk about any country. You can talk about an Asian country. You can talk about an African country. You can talk about literally the whole world. Don't just circumscribe your debates to England. In fact, don't talk about England if it's not absolutely, I mean, if it's not mentioned or if you don't think it's not, it's only if you think it's relevant, you can use England. Otherwise, it's not like a compulsion of sorts. See, marks are not out of Kanishk. It's on a range. And the speaker score range is 67 to 83, 75 being average. So the judge will start with 75. They'll give you below 75 if your speech is inadequate, below average speech. And they will give you above 75 if it's like an above average speech. It's not out of them, it's on a scale. How can we talk about another perspective? We're supposed to avoid knifing or opposite. See, knifing will not happen just because you're talking about a different thing. I mean, my opening talked about something. I'm not talking about it. I'm adding to it. So adding does not count as knifing. Knifing is direct contradiction of what opening is saying. The house is always for an argument. Although I don't quite understand what this question means. What will happen if there are technical difficulties during the speech? You'll be given 2 minutes maximum to join back, and if you don't, then your teammate can deliver the speech on your behalf. But yeah, the technical policy will give you maximum 3 to 5 minutes. If you don't join within 3 minutes, then it's going to be a pass. Let's assume I'm well versed with international law and I bring it up in my speeches. Do you think judges will think I cheated, or would they be impressed? See, you don't have to impress the judges. You just have to logically understand if what I am saying makes sense against the other team and if I have better analysis. So if you know international law, sure, you can use it. But if you want to use a concept, let's say you want to use a concept called the logic of deterrence in international relations, you can't just throw that word around or phrase around. You're going to have to explain what logic of deterrence means. This means that you can use your special knowledge, but you should also be able to explain what this means then. So the judges will get to know that you cheated if you just keep saying logic of deterrence, and you are never able to explain what it means. Or if you're not able to give examples on that, or if you're not able to define it in your own words. So the judges get to know like that. They just don't like call you out for using any new term because they understand that you have existing knowledge base, and that's perfectly all right. I am done with taking the questions now. Let's move to a little bit of practice, all right, for the next 20 minutes or so. I'll put a motion, all right, I'll share my screen, I'll show you the motion. I'll give you all 2 to 3 minutes to think about the motion. Don't immediately start putting your arguments in the chat. I don't want you to do that. Take 2, 3 minutes, 5 if you want. Think about a good argument and then put it in the chat, all right? Siddhi, wait, patience. I'm coming to the instructions, so don't just jump the gun here. Basically, I'll tell you which side you're supposed to go as, and I'll tell you how to like, and the argument has to be very short when you put in the chat box, because I can't read uh paragraphs after paragraphs in the chat. The time doesn't permit us to do that. I will take the first 10 responses, all right, only. So I will give you 5 minutes of prep time. After those 5 minutes, I will invite responses, and you are supposed to enter your responses. The first 10 responses I will comment on. After that, I will show you the slides which I have made about what are the points that you could have had from proposition side, what are the points that you could have had from opposition side. Is that understood? Give me a thumbs up if it is. Okay. All right, then sharing my screen, just have a look at the motion. Also, I want to explain something very important here. See, sometimes you will be confused about what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to regret this, regret something? Am I supposed to support it as side proposition? We will tell you which side you are on. If you're OG and CG, you are side proposition. And if you're OO and CO, you're side opposition. Once you know if you're proper op, how do you decide what you're supposed to do in the motion? Always read the first point, okay? Please note that the side proposition, which is OG and CG, they do what the motion tells them to do, and opposition always acts against what this house says. So what the house says is always done by side proposition. If the house tells you to regret, you regret something. If the house tells you to believe in something, you believe in that. If the house tells you to support, you support. If the house tells you that you will do something, then you prove that you will do something. If the house I mean, you get the gist of it, right? And if you're opposition, you do exactly the opposite of what the house tells you. So in this motion, this house regrets. So the house is regretting. Proposition will regret because proposition supports the house. Opposition will go against it. This means that they will support the thing that the house tells them to regret. How many of you understand what I just said? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. All right. Lower your hands. Is there a question? I don't know why you have your hands raised, guys, because you're supposed to put your questions in the chat. So, was that the agenda? There's no agenda, Kanishk. You're confusing yourself. The motion is there's no agenda in this in BP format. There's a motion, a topic, and yes, this was the topic. What will happen if there are technical difficulties? Okay, I've already responded to that. What is the house? See, this house is always the phrase with which any motion will start. The house refers to the side proposition, side opposition, and the judges put together. So your debate room is the house where there is proposition, opposition, and the judges. Okay, now look at the motion. This house regrets the characterization of envy as a vice. Characterization is definition of envy. All right. Regrets the definition of envy as a vice. Envy is when I get jealous of somebody else's success, when I feel like I want their life because it's so good and cool. So that's why I added this picture as well. For those of you who don't understand what envy means, I hope this sort of like a pictorial representation helps you with understanding it. Now, envy as a vice. Vice is something bad, virtue is something good, right? So, for example, patience is a virtue and stealing is a vice, or like hatred is a vice. Uh, so those kind virtue and vice. This house regrets the definition of envy as a vice. What will proposition do here? Will you regret calling envy a vice or support it in the chat? I want everybody to answer. This can get confusing. When you're prop, you're always regretting. One you're wrong, you're always regretting because the proposition does what the house tells them to do, right? If it's a this house supports motion, this house supports characterization of envy as a vice. Would proposition support or oppose? Perfect. You understand. All right. Now look at the motion. I will respond to the first five or maximum if there are shorter arguments, 10 arguments based on the length of the arguments you're putting in the chat. Okay. And because we need to also cover the points I have made for and against this motion. So that's that. The motion is this. I give you exactly 3 minutes from now. So by 7:15, all of you should be ready. I will look at the chat box at 7:15 and I will look at the first five responses that I received. The responses which are very, very long and run into paragraphs are not going to be read by default because they are very long. So please make it short. Okay. Uh, I am going to keep my screen shared and I will let you guys have your prep time. You can be side proposition. You have to say that yes, envy is bad, that it is a vice. You regret envy. I'm sorry, you will say that you regret the characterization of envy as a vice, as proposition. All right. I think now's the time to discuss. Everybody ready? Okay. I see some responses in the chat. Let's take the first five responses. Oh my God, there's so many. Guys, now you can stop, okay? Because we won't be able to entertain more than five today. Let's start with Arnav's argument. The one-liners I can take, okay? Let's try 10 if these are one-liners. I'll try to do 10, not more than 10, definitely. Envy is a feeling, and feelings shouldn't be suppressed. Okay, good. That's an argument. Now, in how will you run this argument in a debate tournament? You will talk about what the world looks like. You will say, okay, people are told to suppress their feelings. Oftentimes, men are told that being emotional is like a bad thing. Oftentimes, people are told that people who are, I mean, are told that being emotional is a feminine trait. It keeps you from becoming successful in life. And those are all bad things because it gets a person to not express themselves, and sometimes not expressing oneself can lead to a lot of problems and like mental frustration, and that's why we think what needs to be expressed should be expressed, and envy is a natural sort of like a sentiment which you cannot call a vice, right? So yes, that's a good argument, enough, but then you're going to have to analyze it in your speech, okay? So, and this is how you do it, the way I just did. So that's my comment on the first argument. The second one by Nabiha is it's human nature to envy, and it powers us to achieve, and characterizing it as a vice is wrong. Okay, so the new part about Nabiya's argument is that she's saying that it gives empowers us, right? At the end of the day, it helps us not just want to be like the other person, but also work on it. So envy is a trait that can embolden your like empower you to do better in life and to be like the person that you envy. So it's like a driving force, and anything that drives us towards perfection and progress is not something that is to be called a vice. That's how you analyze it. All right. Uh, I think Sameev's argument is the same as Nabiha's, so we can skip. Tanisha's argument is also the same as Nabiha's. So the third comment I will third input I'll comment on is Niyati. I, as proposition, regret the characterization of envy as vice because envy is not an immortal or wicked feeling. It is just like a startled reflex of some. Yes, good. Okay, this is a good input. Envy is not a pure emotion. It comes into being in relation to a lot of other emotions, which means that it's very difficult for you to say that this is something that comes inherently from a person or that the person is inherently envious of somebody. This happens as a matter of external influence. So something that exists outside of your body or something that is encouraged from outside of your body cannot be called your vice, right? Because it comes from outside. So that's going to be the analysis for this point made. You guys are following the analysis that I'm giving, right? Okay. The next point. So these are three good points that we have so far from Arnav, Niyati, and Nabiha. Also the people in between, but it just happened to be repetitive. Uh, Use as a motivation, Amok says, yes, that's already covered. Suppressing of feelings can be problematic, not derogatory. Derogatory is something that you all have to explain. I don't think that's the right word to use in this case. But yes, Amok's points have also been largely covered. So if you were closing Amok, you would have to think about new arguments in this situation because your opening has already run them. So now you understand how opening and closing work as well. Envy is not a vice, rather is simply another form of desire born of comparison. Desire wants has kept us aware of needs that could be help better our own life and one notice something that could. Okay, yeah, this is a Shreyas' point is an analysis of what has already been said by a lot of people about motivation. So now you understand the basic argument that opening will run in this debate is motivation because literally everybody is coming up with motivation only. All right. So, though envy may lead to briefly time negative opinions of the individual, it eventually fades off and leaves only a desire to be better. See, this Asis's argument is also motivation. This means this is how you find out what the opening is likely to say. You will think in your prep time is closing that look, my opening will definitely run motivation because everybody intuitively thinks about motivation when they look at this motion. So, what can I say beyond motivation? There are some obvious arguments that everybody will think about. You're supposed to make yourself different from those obvious arguments. That's important. All right. So far, I think one extension that can be used was Niyati's argument, where she said that envy is not a permanent sort of a state of being, and something that comes from outside cannot be called my vice because it comes from outside. That's a perfect extension because she's the only person who's made that argument. Nobody else has made that argument in the chat box. Envy is what motivates. Again, Siddharth's argument is also starting with motivation. Being envious doesn't refer to being a negative act. It's not a negative act as it tells people of their shortcomings. Okay, now this is a good outlook, right, Kunal's? So he's saying that this could also give you insights into who you are as a person and what you need to do better. And this is not something that we can know, I mean, we can let go of. If you did not have the ability in you to be envious, then you won't be able to question yourself. You will become self important. You will be complacent, and that's not admirable because it keeps you from progressing and doing better in life. So again, envy will help you do better, but I think why Kunal's argument is slightly different and like gives it a new tinge is because he says that it's not because you will become better by looking at the other person. It's because you will find the faults in yourself. So this Kunal's argument is a classic way of how you can extend on an already existing argument. Do you get it? So the already existing argument is that motivation occurs, and motivation happens when I look at other people and try to become like that. So if somebody has a Mini Cooper, I'd probably also try to buy it by doing well in my life. So very like basic sort of an example. But Kunal's argument says that it's not just about looking at somebody else's fancy car and wanting to buy it. It's also about looking introspectively in yourself and thinking, why is it that I do not have like this car when I'm at the same age as this person or even older, and what is it that I should do better? So introspection is facilitated. All right. Uh, Again, Anya's argument same. Encourage people to do better in life to achieve the value they want. Right? Example. You try to give an example. That's a good thing about your argument. Shwet says that it has forward propelling characteristics. I think you mean to say that it again motivates you to do better. I'm skipping the arguments where motivation is being talked about. Like Ahan's argument is again motivation. Ruhina, okay, largely the same. Largely the same. I won't credit it as a new point. Better things are nerve, yes. Better things is also again the same kind of argument that the others are making. So I think now we have a fair understanding of how this works. Let me show you the arguments, and I'll tell you to. I request you to go through them for 2 minutes by yourself and ask me any questions if you have. Don't keep sharing your arguments anymore now. Just look at the one that I have. Okay, are we all through? Have we tried to like read? Are there okay? Now let's just quickly go through these points with me. Let me see. You are commenting on. No, no, Kanesh, the argument that you're making about Christianity is not right. Because see, there's a lot of religion that have different things to say. So some religion will say that women should not go out because women are inferior to men. So we can't make every religion happy. Religion does not have universal truths. So it's okay to offend a religious group. I mean, we're not offending anybody. We're just saying that the religion can follow what they want to follow, and we will follow what we want to follow. So I can't always be careful about who I'm hurting. It's more about what makes me happy. I'll do what I want to do. What makes me happy is what I'll do, and the religion will do what they want to do to like keep themselves happy, etc. So basically, that's the system, right? So don't use Christianity. Don't say that, oh, you'll be offending this culture, that culture. Because see, I can't make everybody happy, right? It's about what makes the person happy. Because if you try to make every religion happy, then maybe a lot of conservative ideas will have to be subscribed to as well. And that's not ideal. Do you guys understand why I'm saying this? Okay. Now look at these points. We'll quickly wrap with this. The points on proposition can be, and I think most of you have already run these points. Envy is actually created for people to want to buy new things through rigorous advertisements. Now, what does this mean? This means that look, how is envy generated? When you see somebody living a better life than you do. And how does that happen? Because of the competitive culture. And who makes the culture? The other people around you. If you're a poor person and you're envious of somebody riding a Cadillac and you can't buy that Cadillac, it's not because it's not a fault of your own. It's because society shows off their goods and possessions. They show off that they can do this and you can't. And then again, we live in hustle culture, in a world of hustle culture, where everybody tries to make you feel small. So envy happens as a result of somebody else's bad intentions toward you. Do you get it? This is why envy is the kind of practice which is, I mean, envy is an emotion that people encourage or like push in you or like try to beget in your identity. This is not something that comes to you internally. You're not inherently doing something bad. It's a natural thing that comes to you when somebody else tries to, through advertisement, through like show off and like flex culture, they try to make you feel small. So that I feel small when I don't see myself in a world of luxury should not be held against me. That's the first point. The second point is that envy is a source of self improvement. Like all of you were saying motivation, right? It's just another way of saying that, making that argument. The third thing is that envy is an empowering emotion. sometimes, because when you feel, see, what do emotions do? They move you, right? Logically, if I am very small and I'm fighting against big authorities like the government, like people who wrong me, like the rich people, logic will tell me don't fight, you lose. Emotions help you fight then. And fighting is important because that's how revolutionary things are done. So envy is an empowering emotion because this emotion can help you wage the right kind of battle with the wrong authorities. You can say that, look, I am envious, and that's all right because you've given other people the means to achieve what you haven't given me the means to achieve. It's unfair on so many levels, right? So you are awakened and you know that you're being wronged only when you feel envious. If you're not envious of anybody's success, then you're never going to be able to find out why you are not successful, and then you're never going to be able to find out what the government isn't doing for you, which they do for other privileged people. Do you guys understand that much? I'm also analyzing the argument simultaneously for you to understand how analysis is done. Are we all following? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, all right, you can lower your hands. Now, points on opposition. Also, if you don't understand, just watch this recording. Because obviously, guys, I mean, we have very little time, and all motions require like some rigorous debate and analysis. So please watch this over again. And yesterday there was a debate that was shared with you as well. Watch other debates on YouTube to get a fair understanding of how this is dealt with. On opposition, how will we rebut these points? So point A on prop is rebutted on op. How? Prop is saying that you are made to buy new things, etc. And that's why you feel envy when everybody shows off. Op is saying that because everybody shows off in the culture that we live in, we need to make sure that we don't fall in the trap. And we will not fall into the trap of liking other people more than ourselves when we remember that envy is a vice. Because when you call something a vice, you try to stay away from it. All right. The second point is then that envy is a source of self improvement. How do you rebut that or not? The rebuttal is that envy is might be a source of self improvement according to Prop, but then understand that envy is an emotion, and this is a bad, like this is an emotion that makes you feel small about yourself. So emotions overwhelm you, and when you're overwhelmed, you can't take meaningful action. So proposition is saying that no, emotions can propel you to make very meaningful changes. Opposition is saying no, when you're emotional and less rational, you're likely to only brood over your problems. You're not likely to act on them, right? So whatever you are thinking about in the state of envy is not actionable as such, because emotions prevent you from taking action. They don't encourage you to take action. Now, in point C, envy is an empowering emotion sometimes, but then that is being opposed by opposition when they say that, look, emotion which makes you feel lesser is unlikely to. Just give me 1 second, guys. So basically, the third point is being opposed because on C, look at the point that is being made. Here they're saying that emotion is empowering, right? This means that your emotions can make you feel very powerful. Rationality often tells you to do the logical thing, and logical thing is not to fight. But sometimes emotions are right. You need to fight, even if you think the likelihood of winning is less. That's what Prop is saying. Op is saying no, that's bad. Because if in the sway of emotions you go and fight the powerful authorities, you are definitely going to lose in the wake of this retaliation, because you will not have enough ammunition. The powerful people always have like great support and resources to quell your retaliation. This means that emotions will make you feel disengaged from rationality, and that's why you are likely to do things which are like not good for you in the under the sway of these emotions. That's why envy should be a vice and not a virtue. I hope you all understand. I'm going to end today's session this session right here, and I'll take questions if we have any. But otherwise, we're calling it a day. So thank you so much for joining in, and we will meet again tomorrow for a similar prep. All right. So those who want to leave and have no questions, you have a good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.
Nitiksha, should I stop the recording then?
I think we'll take the questions as well so that we can redirect people into. Are there
Sure.
any questions, guys? All right, apparently not. Okay, yes. Pritham, is it Pritham or is it Pratham? And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Anyway, your question? Let me unmute you guys now. Yes, unmute and ask.
Yes, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I wanted to say that I'm not added in the group. I have message also, so can you please
Yeah,
add
so
me?
we'll look at that message. Devika, we'll look into Pritham's addition to the group. Okay, Mahi,
Yeah.
what's your question?
Thank you. ma'am.
Just
You're
drop
welcome.
your contact on the chat, please.
Mahi?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I had a question regarding the first aspect, matter or content. Now I understand we're not allowed to use statistics at all since internet access is restricted. But if we do have any fair idea, if we do recall any statistic related to the matter, is it all right for us to use it?
Statistics don't have weightage even if you are like somebody who knows them beforehand.
All right. And another content related thing I wanted to ask about, what about quotes? Are we allowed to use one generic quotes that are common parlance, everyone knows them? And are we also allowed to use industry specific quotes, which the intelligent
Okay,
layman may not know?
got it. So I think, see, the thing is that you can use quotes and nobody's going to stop you, but nobody's going to credit you for the rhetorics either.
Oh,
Like it's wasted effort because quotes don't help as much as logic does. It's about pure logic. Quotes are more important in oratory, where you're supposed to impress with your rhetorical ability. Do you get it?
okay. Over here, it's fully about logic, not even
It's fully logical.
no
Yeah.
focus on rhetorics. All right, good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just give me 1 second. I'll give Sespraja. I'm so sorry. This is Sespraja. If I'm mispronouncing it, I'll just give you the rights to unmute.
Hi, good evening. It's Sai Supraja. Uh, so my doubt was, since we have to more or less will have to communicate with our teammate on WhatsApp.